All right, welcome everyone to the Heritage Capital Project's Stage 1 workshop for the 2027 to 2029 biennial funding cycle. My name is Jay Bearston, and I will be leading this workshop today. I am going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Of course, the controls are a little different. Okay. All right. So, as I said, my name is Dave Bearston. I am the Director of Heritage Outreach here at the Washington State Historical Society, which manages the Heritage Capital Projects program on behalf of the state of Washington. And I also have David on the line, if you don't mind popping in and saying hello. David works with me on this program. He works more with grantees on kind of the latter half of work with the reimbursements than the sort of front half of applications. I'll be your main contact, but he's here and I want him to briefly introduce himself so you get to know him as well.
Hello, everyone. I'm David Sinjak. I'm the Capital Projects Coordinator for the Washington State Historical Society. I manage our capital projects and the reimbursement side, as Jay said, of the Heritage Capital Projects grants. I see a lot of familiar faces and names. Hello. I probably won't be speaking too much today, but want to welcome everyone.
Yeah, thanks, David. And David's pretty good about getting questions answered in the chat. At the end of kind of my prepared information today, we'll open up for a nice long Q&A session. But quick one-offs also can be answered in the chat, and I usually just read through the whole chat anyway during the Q&A until people have questions they want to ask live. So. We are your Heritage Capital team, and we're excited to work with you on another round of grants. If you missed it, we held our Heritage Capital Projects Fundamentals Workshop a few weeks ago. Today we're going to dive deeper into Stage 1, which is the eligibility review. But if you're looking for a high-level basic concept, basic rules workshop. This was recorded. It's on YouTube. You can watch it. If you go to, you can see the link there at the bottom, washingtonhistory.org/HCP. Scroll down to the workshop section. You can find that watch here link if you're interested in that. Here is our list of dates for this round. These dates are all listed in the guidelines document, so you don't have to scramble. And of course, we'll be distributing slides after the workshop as well. We're right here at the Stage 1 workshop. The last day to submit your eligibility review through the grants portal is Friday, April 10th. So it's coming up in just a few weeks here. And even if you are a little bit on the fence about your project or its eligibility, and you're not sure you're going to submit a final grant in the future, submit to meet this deadline, because if you don't submit at this deadline, we cannot accept an application later. So if there's any chance you want to submit a full application in June, please go ahead and make sure that you're submitting the eligibility review by the 10th. Which, as I mentioned in our fundamentals workshop, we try to kind of ask for the least amount of information we can in this first stage so that everyone can kind of understand their eligibility for the program before they put a lot of time and effort into a full grant application. But there are a few areas of information that we need some detail on, which we will discuss today. All right. I have this slide in the fundamentals workshop as well. We've reorged the guidelines a little bit. It's all the same information as before with a few edits for clarity. But instead of separating the guidelines into Stage 1 and Stage 2, we've actually separated the guidelines and the application form into three sections: organization, property, and project, or three main sections with kind of all the regulations and rules. And within each of those sections, we have divided those sections with the sort of requirements, which is the rules around organizations, the rules around the properties, the rules around the projects, and then a walkthrough of the eligibility review and the full proposal under each of those three sections. So it's just a little bit of information reorg for the guidelines, and the application we hope will be a little bit more clear. We're always making edits to the guidelines to try to communicate a little better. Again, no substantive changes, no large substantive changes to the rules, but just a little bit different organization. Today, we'll be discussing the rules and requirements around everything that relates to the information we're asking about in stage 1. So there will be a few areas where we're like skipping through, like, oh, we're not going to talk about this until stage 2 workshop. So definitely join us for the stage 2 workshop, which will be on Thursday, April 30th. That workshop will be going into a lot more detail about kind of crafting narratives and crafting your application. The eligibility review is really just like get the basics information submitted about your project, the amount you're asking for, and your eligibility as an organization. Okay, so today we're going to dive right into the portal and do a side-by-side. Let me pull up some more. All right, sharing. All right, this is what the landing page of the Heritage Portal looks like. You saw there's a quick link, washingtonhistory.org/portal. If you're new to the portal, here's the Create an Account Now button. We do manually link all of the requests, the registration requests that come in because all of the information within the portal, the user profiles are linked to the organization profiles, which are linked to the grant application forms. It's a large amount of data, and so it does take 24 to 48 hours for me to go ahead and manually link your registration into existing information if there is an existing information in the site. And there probably is, because when we created this database, we pulled very basic information from every past grantee and uploaded it into the database. So odds are that your organization exists in there, even if you haven't registered yet, because perhaps there was a previous grant application many years ago. All right. So today, I'm going to walk through the information in the guidelines alongside the information that we're requesting in the application form. We really designed the guidelines to function as side by side. Here's the guidelines, here's the form, here's the instructions, how to fill it out, and some information for you to make that easier. So I've got a copy of the guidelines here. And you need to start your application. There's a button here for you to do that. I've got one, I've got many in my little dummy account here that I'm going to pull up. All right. So the purpose of the eligibility review, the purpose of stage 1, is to determine whether you are an eligible organization who has an eligible project, and if there's any sort of extenuating circumstances that would disqualify you from our program. So to that end, we ask for the following information. Starting with, are you an eligible applicant? Here in the guidelines under the section about organization, under the requirements heading, it lists eligible applicants, which we went over in the fundamentals. So we are going to be checking for your 501c3 letter or confirmation that you are a municipality or tribal government, something like that. Appropriation limits. So this is something that we just sort of check on the background because we can see all the active previous grant projects. And folks have gotten a little bit tripped up about this. So I just want to clarify that this only counts for future, like current and future appropriations, not past appropriations. So if you have a past grant that is being closed out or under monitoring, that doesn't disqualify you from applying again. What this refers to is basically starting a project, not finishing it, but applying again in 2 years, which is permitted. Even if you have an open contract with us on a project, if you are in need of more grant funds, you may apply the next round. Because the timeline is so long, we permit people to apply even if they have a grant project in process. This limit is referring to a third appropriation. So you can only have one open project and one sort of in the hopper that you've sort of pre-applied for in order to get future funding. So yeah, I've gotten several questions about if I'm under monitoring, does this count? And no, it only counts for current and future grants that you are either in process or that have been promised to your organization through an application process. All right. When you start your grant application, it will automatically link your organization to the form because you're logged in as a user under that organization. And this information about the organization type, addresses, county will be pulled from your organization profile within the system. If this needs to be updated, go ahead and go to the organization profile here on the left-hand side. Click that, click edit in the upper corner, and update the information on the organization profile to get this information, which is pulled into the grant application to do that. And I will go ahead and open our application form here to walk through this section. You'll come to enjoy the downtime that comes with using the Flex platform and the loading. So this is where the organization name links from. And then you in this section need to identify your project personnel. So as is outlined here in the guidelines, the primary contact is the person who will interface with us as staff the most. This is for coordinating on the grant application, reimbursement reports, status reports, all that kind of stuff. This person can change over time. So for instance, if during the application period you want to have your grants writer be the primary contact, and then if you get awarded, then maybe it's your project, maybe it's your operations person. It can change over time. It just needs to be one person throughout the life of the grant. Like I say, it can switch between departments, whoever's most relevant for where you are in your grant cycle. But we need to know at any one time if we have a question or need to talk with you about your grant. We have one person that we are following up with, and that's the right person to get us the information that we need, as opposed to trying to copy a bunch of people and hoping that we find the right one. So that's very important to keep us updated on who's the right person to contact for your project. The authorized signatory is the person who has the authority to act on behalf of the governing body. For most 501c3s, that would be a board of directors or board of trustees. For a city or perhaps county, that could be a council, someone who is able to act on behalf of a council. Often it's a mayor or a city manager if it's a municipality. And this person doesn't necessarily need to be involved in logging into Flux, especially if they're kind of a pretty high-level executive. But the person who is able to make legal agreements on behalf of the organization we need to have someone with enough authority because it is a legal document that you sign with the state of Washington. The project manager is the person who is managing the on-the-ground work, like literally working with contractors, maybe doing some of the work themselves if they're a staff person who's in a sort of maintenance or facilities role, And that could be the same person as the primary contact. Between the primary contact, authorized signatory, and project manager, those could all three be the same person if you have an executive director of a very small organization, who is kind of wearing multiple hats. The additional contact, however, does need to be a different person than any of the other ones listed above. It really needs to be an additional contact. Literally, just if we were not able to get a hold of any of the other three, we were going to start with a primary contact, of course. But it needs to be a separate person who has some working knowledge of the project to get us information that we need. So those are the roles. As you see, they're outlined here in the guidelines pretty thoroughly. And again, the personnel can change over the life of the project. You just need to keep us updated about who's who and who's doing what for the project. And then for the purposes of the grant application, there are two attachments in this section. It's the governing body, the list of your board officers, preferably with affiliations and other just sort of brief information, and then that IRS determination letter. If your organization profile, as I said over here, lists you as a municipality, then you won't see this. You won't be required to upload that. So just by way of mechanics, the way to upload a document into the system is by clicking this button. You get this drop, this pop-up window, excuse me. And you can drag and drop a file here. And because I clicked on the little plus button next to the name of the document that I'm uploading, it automatically selects it for me. And then I just hit start upload. Oh, it has a valid character name. No plus signs. All right. Should not have picked that one off of my desktop. Let's do this one. Start upload. And then it hits 100% here. And you're able to drag and drop multiple files if needed, and they will all show 100% upload. Close this out, and they will appear. I believe I might have to reload here. They will appear in this attachments section. If you're, let's see if it's going to update for me. There it is. Okay, so you can see that the attachment here has uploaded, and the line item above has disappeared. If for some reason you're like, actually, I want to upload a second document related to my governing body, you can always upload an attachment in this box using the plus button on the box itself. So just go ahead and click here. Gonna drag another file here, but because I used the add document option on the box itself instead of on the line with the file name, I can choose any document title I want. So for us, it helps a lot to get this correct. So I would say org, governing body, roster with affiliations. I have another extra document I'm uploading about my governing body. Start that upload. Again, wait till it hits 100 and we can close out. Oops, scroll down. Yeah, and there it is, the second document. And you can see here that the labels are right underneath the document title, governing body roster, governing body roster. All right. Moving along, the next section under organization is governance. This is where we ask, what's your annual operating budget? We're trying to kind of get a sense of data on our end of like what size organizations are applying for Heritage Capital and what kinds of projects they're doing. So it's helpful for us to know operating what size you are. And then we have some questions about conflicts of interest. And so this is just us doing our due diligence to make sure that there are not going to be conflicts in regards to a state-funded Heritage Capital project. So there's three kind of yes/no questions here. Any conflicts are internal to the organization, and I've got that information here in the guidelines, conflicts of interest. So internal, so personal or familial relationships between board members or board members and staff, things like that. And this doesn't necessarily disqualify you. If you report a conflict, we would just reach out and talk with you about ways that we mitigate that conflict for the purposes of this project, separating information, having a clear chain of decision making, different things like that, and just put some steps in place to mitigate that potential conflict. That's the first option, is internal to your organization. Second would be a conflict between the organization and potential project-based folks, such as a contractor or an architect, engineer, something like that. So if you're related to anybody who's on the team that you're hiring, please let us know. And again, we'll take some steps to mitigate that potential conflict. And then with the state of Washington or the Historical Society. If there's anyone from your organization that has any personal relationships with folks from the state of Washington, government of the state of Washington, please let us know. If you select yes to any of these, a quick pop-up box will show up. Give us a brief one-line description. We'll review it, and we'll either flag it as like, oh, let's follow up and chat with them about this, or we'll say that doesn't seem like a conflict that is going to cause any concern, and we'll move along. And then at the bottom here, we ask about your process. So this is particularly so for potential internal conflicts. But do you have your board of directors sign a conflict of interest form annually or every 2 or 3 years? Just type that in here. We have our board members review their potential conflicts every 2 years. And that's how we get our information. Or we solicited, self-reporting for the purposes of this grant, and none were reported. Just how did you gather that information in order to communicate that to us here on the form? Alrighty. Well, that concludes the information that we ask about the organization for stage 1. Real basic stuff. Just trying to get the basics about who you are as an organization. Here in the guidelines, we're going to go past match income because that will come up in stage 2. And I kind of already walked us through the form, but this section of the guidelines gives you instructions, as I just sort of vocalized, about filling out each of these sections. So, as you're working on this form, have the guidelines up on the screen. Use the drop downs to select people who will fulfill these roles, et cetera, et cetera. It walks you through every section. All right. Now let's move to property. We're going to skip past our stage 2 content here, which, as you can see, is a little bit longer, to property. Okay. Kind of going over the requirements for the property, the subject property of a capital grant application for the state of Washington. This is probably the thing that we spend the most time reviewing in stage 1 is your property control. You must have property control for a minimum of 13 years past project completion. So we're estimating that to be, for this grant cycle, 13 years past June 30th of 2029, which puts us at June 30th, 2042. So you need to demonstrate that you own the property outright. Your organization owns the property, and you can do that, in a variety of ways. I'll get to the attachments in a moment. Or that you have a long-term lease with the property owner that goes through at least 2042. Those are 2 kind of main ways. There are some extenuating circumstances where there are more complicated property management ownership structures, which we can work with you on if that applies to you. And if that might apply to you, go ahead and reach out directly, and we will work through that with you. But typically, we see property ownership or a long-term lease. This is particularly the lease with like a nonprofit partner in a city-owned building, for instance. The 13-year monitoring, this property monitoring section here, refers to, well, it is required through essentially as a protection of the state's investment in a privately owned, potentially privately owned property, right? If it's a 501c3, that's a private organization. So the state wants to know that you're going to, one, maintain the property, including the historic features, if it is a historic building, and continue to provide public access to history at that property for the duration of at least 13 years due to the state investment in your property. So through the portal, we have annual quick annual form that you fill out. It'll prompt you, it'll send you an email. Hey, quick, fill out the form. Let us know you're still maintaining the building and still offering public history programming at your site. All right, actually, let's pop over to the form now. And on the form, you have a drop down here, and you can select from the properties that are attached to your organization. If you don't see anything here, or you see other properties but not the one you want to apply for a grant for, then you need to create a new property profile. And the way that you do that is a little circuitous, but I will walk you through it right now because you have to do it in order to complete stage one and select the property here. So I'm going to select that property. I'm going to go ahead and save and close for our purposes later. But essentially, you have to go in and create a new record in the system. And the way that you do that is you go to the organization profile, you click on your organization name, and under the organization, it will list all the properties associated with your organization. And in order to add a new one, you have this add a property, hit the plus button. And right here, it will just ask for two pieces of information, the property name, and then the property type. And so you fill out those two, you hit save. I'm not going to do that right now, but you hit save. Let the system reload. You may have to reload the page. And then that new property that you created will show up under this menu of properties. So here's those 5 that I already have created for this account. And only that name and the type will be inputted. Obviously, that's all that you've put in. So you'll need to go in, click on the one you just created, hit this edit button up on the top, and fill in all the details of the property. So the benefit of having it in this separate section is that if you apply for a grant next year or in 2 years, again, it's all there. The address is probably not going to change. There's not much about the properties typically that change. And so once the property is in there, it's just already populated. You put it in once, it's already populated for any grant you're asking for. We just ask for a variety of information about the building, location information, some legal data, historical information, and any lease or contracts associated with that property. Fill all this out, hit save and close. I'm going to hit cancel. And then once you've allowed things to reload a time or two, Flex does require some reloading. We go back to our application. Oh, and I chose a property that has some information missing. But you can see that since I selected that property, the information was populated. In fact, let me try a different one that's maybe has a little more information on it. All right, Flux. Okay. So you can see when you're out of edit mode. So this is just sort of a view mode. You can see property name, the type, the address, legislative district, year built. All this information is pulled from that property profile you just filled out. So we won't list everything in here, but just kind of some of that key information. Some of the information is useful for us on the back end to sort of know, like, oh, how many historic buildings versus non-historic buildings, things like that. The legal data, parcel number, things like that is really only required for contracting much later. So that's not going to show up here. But the more information you provide now, the less time it takes to put your contract together in the future if you are awarded a grant. Okay, I'm going to go back into edit mode here. Oh, I could have mentioned this little table of contents at the top is our links. So you can click on it and it'll scoot you right down to the section that you click on. All right, so we've selected the property, we've filled out the information in the property profile, and that's other area. The next question on the form here is describing the amount of annual visitation at your site. We've left this as a very open field, mostly because we have a variety of different types of folks that apply and types of sites and types of organizations. So we kind of want to like let you dictate how you're presenting that to us. But it's basically just to try to understand how much public access you're providing, and what it looks like for the public to visit, because these are public dollars. And then we've got a series of attachments here. And this is actually, images are where you might make more use of this attachment box button, where you're uploading a handful of images and you'll maybe upload a handful more. So the documentation of long-term site control. Let's see, do I list this? I guess I just have a summary here. So this is the section of the guidelines that walks us through the form. What I would want to see for someone who owns a property would be like a deed, or even just a printout of the county assessor's profile for your property that lists your organization as the owner of that property. So just some way that affirms to us that you are indeed the owner of that parcel of land. For a lease situation, we would need to see the lease and with the property owner, and be able to clearly determine kind of what date it was signed and what date it expires, and have a copy of that document. Again, if you have a more complex ownership structure or arrangement, there may be a few additional documents we would require for this, but we'll talk with you specifically if that applies to you. And then we have three categories of images, or, well, site plan is potential image or potential diagram, sort of attachments to help us understand your property a little bit better. We've got images of the building exterior, just, 2 to 4 nice shots of each, probably 4 shots, one of each of the side of the building, and then the general setting or site, one from a little bit further back. Is it on a city street? Is it out on a rural road? Is there a road? That type of thing, so we can get a sense of the setting of your property if we've never been there before. Like I said, we have done a lot of traveling around the state, though. we know a lot of the properties beforehand, but it's good to have that for the panel as well, to see the property we're working with. And then site plan. If you have an individual building, you do not need to submit a site plan. If you have a property with multiple buildings on its site, whether it's a campus of buildings or a historic farmstead home without buildings, if there's multiple buildings, we would like to see a site plan. This can be as simple as you pull a screenshot from Google Maps, do some circling and labeling, or just a diagram that you draw, just so we can kind of understand the spatial relationship between the buildings that isn't always as easily conveyed in photos. But again, if you have an individual building that's not connected to any other structures, you don't need it. This should automatically hide. There's an option in if you have an individual building, there's an option in the profile, excuse me, the property profile to say this is a multi-building sort of property. And if that is not checked, then that should go away for folks. But you don't need to submit a site plan of like, here's the rectangle of the building. That's not necessary. Okay. Last section for the property is tribal and DAP consultation. We have this in stage 1 because we want to do our best to help our colleagues over at the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation, that's DAHP, avoid scrambling folks trying to ask for review within the week before the final deadline of the application. So this is a little bit of a lift as far as the information we ask for in stage 1, but it's important to get it started sooner rather than later, which is why we include it. Scroll back up a little bit here to the section in the guidelines. So previously, we had each of the applicants reach out to tribes individually. We have been advised that is, placing a bigger burden on the tribes to receive, 40 requests for review, rather than one from us with a summary of information of the potential projects that will be funded. So the Washington State Historical Society, with the assistance of our tribal liaison, Todd Clark, will be doing tribal consultation on behalf of the Heritage Capital Projects Grant Program, and on behalf of all of you, because it is it's a government-to-government relationship. So what we ask for from you in this section is, will any part of your project involve ground disturbance or site work? So we want you to be pretty specific about this. So like digging a trench for utilities, anything that's where you're going to be digging around in the ground. For most properties that apply for this program, because they're in mostly kind of populated areas, there's been a lot of ground disturbance over the generations, and so we don't get a lot of concern from tribes. But some rural properties, this could be a concern. So if it is yes, we just ask you to kind of briefly describe what you're planning for the ground disturbance. And those are the projects that we're going to focus on providing information to the tribes for, because that would be probably the instance of a project that they would want to be informed of or have any potential questions about. For instance, like if you have a building that you're just replacing the roof on, there's just not a lot of interest for tribal communities related to cultural potential cultural discoveries. So that's all we ask from you for the tribal consultation is information about ground disturbing activities on your project. You are still required to contact DAHP yourself, the Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation. And the way that you do that is you submit an easy project review form. So this is on their website. It's a PDF form that you fill out and you send to this email, 2102@dap.wa.gov. Maddie Levesque is the built environments person who will likely be reviewing these forms. The form basically just asks for some information about the property, the potential projects, and they want to review it for potential effects to historic properties, because 2102, so state law, wants to mitigate any potential negative effects to historic properties that are funded by state dollars. This is not usually a problem for our program because our program is designed to support historic preservation. So our applicants typically don't have too much problem with this. But for the purposes of stage one of your application, you need to have submitted the easy form to Maddie, likely Maddie. Um, upload a upload a copy of it to us, and then list the date here that you uploaded it or sent it to Maddie. You don't need a response in stage one. We just want you to get that process started. Like I said at the beginning, we don't want 30 people reaching out to Maddie 1 week before June 5th trying to get project review. So we have you start now, and we require this in stage one to initiate. All right, we're sailing through. Um, this will be in our stage two discussion. In stage two, you'll input the information that Maddie returns to you, or Rob, depending on who reads it. And then here we are again with the information, the walkthrough information for the form on the program. All right, here we are getting to kind of the heart of the matter. The third section is your project. What are you proposing for your Heritage Capital Projects grant? Let's scroll down a little bit. Oh, here's stage two, scrolling. Here's project. So in reviewing your project summary and the initial sort of scope outline that you'll be providing, we want to make sure that every step of the project you're proposing for funding, including match, is an eligible expense for our program. And that is listed here. We talked about this in the fundamentals workshop, but basically anything related to the construction of a facility. So that can be design and pre-planning, that can be construction, whether it's a historic building or not, and then it could also count toward property acquisition. And it also includes historic vessels, train cars, different other historical assets. Doesn't have to be a building. We do fund historical transportation conveyances is the phrase. Ineligible expenses include maintenance. So we don't want to see the word maintenance anywhere in your grant application. We want to focus on major property improvements. That doesn't mean you can still have things repaired. You don't have to replace in order to have a capital project, but it needs to be sort of a comprehensive property improvement rather than maintenance fixes and small things like that. We often get folks wanting to try to count fundraising, sometimes marketing expenses, things like that are peripheral to the physical work of the project are not eligible. And the other big ineligible expense that we see come through is work related to exhibits. Unfortunately, we do not fund exhibits, even though most of our buildings, the purpose is to house exhibits, many, I should say. We can fund everything around an exhibit, such as painting the walls, installing carpet, installing lighting, even casework if it's permanently installed in the space, but unfortunately not exhibit work itself. All right. Hopefully this is working for me to sort of bounce back and forth between the guidelines and the form here. I'm going to jump back over to the form. We ask you give your project a title, and that includes the name of your site. Can be hopefully relatively short-ish, but is descriptive as well. So, everything and nothing. What type of project? If your project involves more than one of these, for instance, maybe it involves some design, but also some rehabilitation. Pick the one where more of the funds will be going toward, that is the bulk of the project. And then just to double check, is any part of your project, including any match work, does it involve a building or asset that is more than 45 years old? So app is also going to be reviewing this, but we want to make sure that we have that information in our system as well. So we have this quick little question for you. And then project summary. So this should be very high level summary. This is actually, it should include everything though. Just sort of a brief mention of all the major elements of your project. This is what gets submitted to the legislature, essentially. So it needs to kind of include everything, but very, very briefly. And then we have a new question here, and we're calling it project. We're calling this section looking for project contributors. So because capital projects are often complex, and especially nonprofit organizations sometimes have unique sort of management structures and different ways that they're making things work. There are sometimes organizations that play a sort of outstanding role in a project, and we have sort of four of those that we've identified as we'd like to know if you have any of these things happening for your project. So an organization or entity other than the applicant will be managing the project work and contributing to grant reporting. So if you are partnering with another organization, for instance, we had a project with the Friends of Mukai, and they had hired Historic Seattle to help manage their project. And Historic Seattle was submitting reimbursement reports and different things like that. So that was a case of two nonprofits working together to complete the project. So we would like to know about that other nonprofit so that we know who all the major players in the project are. So if that's true, give it a little checkbox, let us know what it is. The other option, the second potential thing we'd like to know about if it applies to your project is an organization or entity other than the applicant will be providing history programming or interpretation at the site. So this mostly comes up where the building is owned by a municipality, such as a city or a county, but they contract with a local 501c3 to run the museum inside the building, and the city is going to be the applicant. So in that sense, because the purpose of the grant is to provide public access to history, we want to know if it's someone other than the applicant that is actually providing that public access to history. So that, again, we can understand all the players in the space and make sure that we're following up in our contract with enough specificity that public access will continue for those 13 years. A third potential situation we'd like to know about is if the property owner, who is not the applicant, is paying for some of the capital improvements. So this will come up when someone has a long-term lease and their land person is going to go ahead and make improvements themselves on the property that they own, and you want to use that as match. If that's happening, that is in-kind match because it's not money that's going through the applicant organization. So we need to know if that is happening so that we can make sure that you understand that match is in kind, and in certain situations, in-kind match is limited to how much you can use. And related, a single donor is providing a substantial amount, more than 50% of your project's cash or in-kind match. So if more than 50% of your funding is coming from one source, one donor, we'd like to know about that. And we'd like to just sort of double check that's a stable donation, because that can really tank a project if something like that were to fall through. Okay, so again, this is not about qualifying you from the grant application. It's literally just if any of these apply to you or your project, please go ahead and check the box, give us a quick description, and we might ask for maybe like a letter of confirmation from your partner organization or your organization providing public access to history. We just want to make sure everyone's on board with what's being proposed and what's being promised in your grant application. All right. In stage one, we do ask you to put a rough budget together. We've got 3 categories of types of expenses. Construction and rehab, that's the bulk of what the invoices that we process. So it's paying your contractor, it's buying nails and screws from the hardware store, it's buying paint, it's paying for the porta potty for the contractors to use while they're on site. Everything related to the physical construction work happening on the site is going to be in this category and proposed to either be cash match, in-kind match, or funded by the grant. Anything in this category is going to be the pre-construction work, whether that's design from an architect, engineer, permitting, review processes, everything that needs to happen before you break ground on that project. And then probably and then property acquisition is any property purchase or donation that you plan to use. This typically ends up being a match just with the way that our rules and scheduling go. But you want to use that value as part of your grant application. So this doesn't count. You can't just use the value of your project. It has to be a property transfer that has taken place. And so in order to count that, and we'll talk about this in stage 2 in a little bit more depth. But in order to, you need to demonstrate that the transfer has taken place, whether it's been a purchase or a donation, and it's that value of the transfer that can potentially count in your budget. I will also note that this section, along with all of the others, can be edited and updated in stage 2. So the bulk of the main point of your project shouldn't change. It shouldn't become a completely different proposal in stage 2. But if you're wanting to wordsmith things, add things, adjust the budget numbers, all that good stuff, you can definitely do that in stage 2. We're just looking for some rough numbers here in stage 1. And those numbers will probably likely change between your submission of stage 2 and our contracting as well, because we know that capital projects change and evolve. So we work with you on that. This bottom section will tally and update these dollar amounts. Again, you may have to hit the save or may have to reload things a time or two to get them to update. And actually, that reminds me to mention something very important. This does not auto-save. You have to click the save button here at the bottom in order to save work. So be sure as you're working periodically to just go ahead and hit the save button and make sure your information is secure on the form. Before we move on from the budget section, I want to talk a little bit more about the requirements. So the grant applications can be a minimum of 10,000 and a maximum of 1 million. You're required to demonstrate a 2-to-1 match. So in the case of a $10,000 grant application, you would need to demonstrate 20,000 in match for 10,000 in grants. That's 2-to-1 for a total project budget of 30,000. For the 1 million, it would be $2 million of match to the $1 million of grant for a total project cost as represented in the application of $3 million. So that is written in the RCW. We are interested in bringing this down. We would love to see this be a 1-to-1. There are other state grants that have lower matching thresholds, and so We are planning to submit some agency requested legislation next budget cycle. So unfortunately won't apply to this um, uh, probably won't apply to this grant round. But if that would be of interest to you and you would appreciate a change like that in this program, we will keep you informed of ways that you can communicate your feelings to your legislators. So if you so choose. So some rules about the matching funds. You cannot use other state dollars as matching. So that includes grants from other state agencies, such as the DAHP, which we just talked about. They have some of their own grant programs. Building for the Arts, um, Conservation and Recreation Office. What are some of the others? Well, anything from the Department of Commerce, and that includes what is called community projects. So there's a way through the state budget where if your legislator puts funding in the budget for directed specifically to your project, that's called local and community projects. Am I remembering that correctly? Didn't list them out here. Anyway, that cannot be used as match. That doesn't disqualify you from applying if it's a different biennium, but you can't use it as match. The match deadline or kind of border, I guess, or boundary is 6 years from the first day of the funding cycle, the day you can start spending funds if you have a signed contract. So that's July 1st of 2027 for this cycle. So your match can date back up to 6 years, which would be July 1st of 2021. So any major capital work you've done, and if you have acquired your property in that window of time, all that stuff can count toward match to help match your grant funds. It has to be properly documented, of course. You don't need to submit all the specific documentation in the application, well, depending on what it is. If it's a property acquisition, we'd want to see something there. But it that can count towards your match. Another point about the match, if your request is $100,000 or less, we permit your match to be 100% in kind. If your grant request is over $100,000, then you're only permitted 50% in-kind match. So what this is designed to do is to give a little bit more leeway to smaller projects who might be operating with smaller budgets, but may have some large donations that are going toward the project, such as property donation or even donated labor from a contractor, a local contractor or something. We wanted to give smaller projects the flexibility to have more of that in kind, because we understand that the cash flow may be a little bit smaller. For larger projects, we want to make sure there's sufficient cash flow to complete the project. So the in kind is limited to 50% on those. So for instance, if you were applying for $500,000, you would be required to have $1 million in match. So that's the 2 to 1, 1 million to 500 for a total project cost of 1.5 million. And of those $1 million in match, 100% can be cash, of course. Cash, we always accept cash. But up to 500 of it could be in kind. So it does hit a ceiling there at that 50% based on whatever your whatever the equivalent is that you're asking for in grant funds. I see Margaret has a hand up. Is it about the match? The question? Nope. Hand is down. Oh,
Wrong button, sorry.
okay. No worries, no worries. Okay. So something else I want to quickly cover. So hopefully you can understand this in your application here for stage 1. the difference between cash match and in-kind match. We get a lot of folks who get confused about that because you think of like, oh, if someone donated a large sum of money to my organization that I'm going to be spending on my grant project, that's in kind because it was a donation. That is incorrect. If it is a donation of dollars, then it is cash. It is cash match that you are spending on your project. So if the dollars are coming into your organization's bank account and the dollars are going out to pay for your contractor or anything related to the project, that is considered a cash expense. So that can be cash match, or that can be potentially reimbursed for grant dollars, of course, depending on the timing of that expense. In kind is only donations that are not money. So it's a donations of time, it's donations of property. If someone has a stack of lumber that they're donating. So in kind involves zero transfer of dollars. It's only the value of things that are donated that are not money. So just want to try to clarify that. People get a little confused about the differences there. So in kind is everything but money. If it's dollars, that means it's cash or grant. And I've got a list here of potential types of in kind match. All right. No concurrent state funding. Oh, this is where I listed out the different grant programs that we often see folks going for. Community projects I talked about. So we require you to pick one source of state funding per biennium. So if you have any of these grants in past, like right now, you're working through a commerce grant or you had a commerce grant a cycle ago, not a problem. Those dollars can't be used as match, but it doesn't prevent you from applying for Heritage Capital for this upcoming budget cycle. What you can't do is submit grants to multiple programs and be funded through multiple state agencies at once. And that's mainly because state funding is so limited. We want you to pick the grant program that is most applicable to your project. Each grant program has their requirements, has their kind of intended purpose. Pick the one that fits your project the best and go with that one. If we find out you've applied to two, we'll make you pick between the two of them. All right. And last but not least, for our stage one application is scope of work. So we are trying something fancy this year. 2 years ago at our stage one, we had a separate section that was the timeline. What we're trying to do this time is have you submit basically try to combine the timeline with your scope of work and have it just be one section instead of two separate ones. So we're essentially having you create a timeline through the scope of work section. We'll see how this goes. This is a new experiment for us. I'm hopeful that it will be successful. So so you can think of this as the project timeline, and what you're going to do is you're going to break your and in fact this is highlighted in orange because it's a little bit in stage one, but mostly you're going to be putting a lot more information in this section in stage two. But you're going to break your project up into elements of work, and this is just a fancy way to try to organize your project in kind of a way that we can wrap our heads around it, the panel can wrap their heads around it, and that either there's kind of two main ways that we see people do this. Either they kind of sequence things, like we're going to start with a roof, and then we're going to do the windows, and then we're going to do the landscaping, so that's chronological, or it's kind of grouped by area or physical sort of proximity, different things like that. So we're going to work on the barn, and then we're going to do the farmhouse, and then we're going to do the outhouse, or different things like that. So the phases can be structured that way. We don't have a lot of rules around this because every project is so different, and we want to give you flexibility of how to organize that information. That can be quite frustrating. We understand to know kind of how to write this up. We can help you with organizing this information, and that's actually the reason that we have you propose a structure here in stage one, and then we can review that and give you some tips on what we think is working and what is we don't think is working. So you can kind of modify and adjust, and then hopefully the scope as presented in your stage two application is clear, organized, and communicates your project to the panel. So these typically an element of work is like kind of a concise piece of the project that is able to be clearly defined as its own element. Like I said, roof replacement, window rehabilitation, installing a new ADA accessible bathroom, kind of these discrete pieces of work that will make up your project. As a for instance, I would say generally elements of work for a small project would be maybe 1 to 3 or 4 different elements. For a large project, total rehabilitation, you might see kind of 5 to 10. What we don't want to see listed out is every single detail of each thing. So things like permitting or bidding out the work is like these process things that are related to the physical work. We don't need those broken out. What we need are the kind of chunks of physical work that you're proposing that comprise of your capital project. So the way we fill this out is we hit that plus button, and it will ask you for some general information. So give it a title. What's your element of work? Tell us what day, it's going to have you pick a specific day. Give us a rough start date and a rough completion date, and then check all that apply. Is this going to be grant funded, cash match funded, or are there some in-kind donations going toward this element of work? So this is multiple. Pick all that apply. And then once you do that, so I'm going to say roof replacement. And we're going to get ambitious. We're going to start on July 15th, 2027. And then we're going to complete that August 15th of 2027. Yep, we'll say 13th. And this is going to be both grant and cash funded. We're going to save. And here it is. It shows up. Roof replacement gives us the dates we listed here. You can see there's an edit option here. If you need to edit it, you can. If you hit this red button, it'll delete it. I've got this. I should say, in the edit view, the list will populate based on the order that you inputted them. But let's add another one. Oh, fuck. You're killing me. We're going to say window rehabilitation. And we're going to say, let's set this at the end of August and finish in October. And we've got some in-kind, we've got some volunteer work happening on those historic windows. So I'm going to put in-kind there. And actually, okay. This, actually, let me do one more. We're going to do some structural repair. And this is going to be also in July, but we're going to actually start this first. We revisited our project schedule, and we're going to need to start this sooner than we thought. So what we'll be looking for when we review the timeline as reviewers is, are you putting dates before you can spend money? Are you saying that you're going to spend grant funds before July 1st of 2027, which is the first day you could conceivably spend funds? That's not going to make you ineligible, but we're going to flag that, and we're going to want to have a conversation with you about that to make sure you're understanding the rules and regulations of the program. And then basically, are all of the things that are happening before July 21st listed as match, and things listed after the first, a combination of match and grant funds. So you can see the order that I put these in. If we save and close, I will show you that on the non editable view, it will actually reorder these to be chronological by starting date. So that just kind of, if you need to put them, if you're putting them in out of order for whatever reason, you're like, oh, I'm adding something that actually is going to occur before the things that I already added. Don't worry, just add it. It can be out of order in the edit view. And then, structural repair, there it is, first in line. It will sort it by the date that you entered. So just worry about the date and making sure the date is where you want it to be. Then you can see we've got the dates listed and the planned funding here. So we'll take a look at this. We'll see, we'll sort of, if there's way too many lines here, we'll talk to you about kind of modifying and refining the list. If there's not enough information here, we'll have you modify and refine by adding detail. So basically we want to try to get your scope of work in sort of a good outline, so that when you submit your full application, it's the right level of detail for us and for the panel to look at. One other thing I was going to say, just went out of my head. Well, hopefully I remember. Oh yes, I remember. So as I said earlier about the budget, you can edit the dollar amounts. You can adjust things back and forth between categories, cash and grant, and different things like that. Similarly, you will be able to edit the scope of work. If you're like, oh, shoot, we forgot about the landscaping. We didn't add that in stage 1. That's fine. Go ahead and add that in stage 2. Again, as long as the general gist of the project isn't changing, you can add details. You can strike things out if you're like, oh, we're not going to get to the windows. The roof bids that we're looking at came in way too high. We're gonna have to do the windows a future time. Fine, take it out, adjust as needed. When you're in stage 2, those will go back to those little pop-ups. You'll be able to edit the title, the dates, and these check boxes if you need to, and then it's going to ask for a longer description of that scope of work. So what specific work are you doing? Who's doing it? Give us a sense of what's going to be happening during the physical work on the building. All right, and then here is another walkthrough, which again I sort of did with you here, the explaining the timeline. Another important element of your elements. Another important thing to be aware of is that this timeline and the scope of work needs to include everything that you're counting as grant funded or match funded. It has to be everything, because we put the full scope in the contract, and you document and submit evidence of your match the exact same way you document and submit evidence of the expenses that you're getting reimbursed. All of them have to be eligible as per our discussion earlier. So it's all of a piece. The whole project has to be represented here. All right, I think I will stop sharing screen and we will open the floor for questions.
We've got one that stumped me.
Ooh, exciting.
So Peggy's got a 2017 determination from DAP of not subject to Governor's Order 0505, and my thought, and I didn't think about it until researching this one, and my thought is that it's a new order now, so we probably need to everybody probably needs to consult with DAP over the new order, Governor's Order, correct?
Yeah, I would say so. So there's kind of two ways you can approach DAP. Um, and they they've kind of called it a couple of different things. Like there's sort of like a soft consultation where basically you call or email and say, "Hey, I've got this project. I just want to like run it by you and like get some information from you about like what is expected." And so you're basically just kind of getting a little information from them. And they can happily do that. They can say, "Oh yeah, you're going to need to resubmit, get that easy form and send us the formal request for review." So they do both. They'll give you just sort of like helpful information about what's required. Or if you fill out the easy, it goes through their kind of formal review channels and gets a determination made. So yeah, I would say we actually, as someone emailed me about this, and they have a long-standing project. It's been underway for many years, and they kind of keep chipping away at it over and over. And so essentially, the scope hasn't really changed in like 4 or 6 years, and they have this determination from DAP about this project from like 4 or 6 years ago. And they're like, "Do I need another consultation, or are we just continuing under this initial consultation?" And I would leave that to DAP to determine. And that would be kind of just a more informal question you could pose to them, give them the situation, let them decide what they want to see, and then we'll of course expect you to follow what they recommend. All right. I'm not seeing any hands up, so I'm just going to start going through the questions in the chat. But if you have a question you want to ask out loud, put your hand up, come off mute, just holler. But Emily asked if people submit the eligibility review and the full proposal at the same time. Oh, I see Suzanne's hand. So I'll answer this first. No, as David said, this is a two-stage process. The piece that we just went through, that version of the form, is stage one. And then in stage two, in fact, I can give you a little preview. You'll see a lot more information that's requested in the form. So once you can see the table of contents here is much longer. Here's some of these things you've already answered. Here's some additional questions.
You're not sharing screen.
Oh, sorry. Of course. I stopped sharing screen. Go back to the top here. So you can see the table of contents is much longer. There's going to be a bunch more attachments that we suggest or require, and then a bunch of narrative questions as well to describe your project in more detail. Lots more stuff. So you have to submit stage one, to let us determine whether or not this program is a good fit for you before you see all the rest of that work, because we don't want you working on that until we know that this is a good program for you. All right, Suzanne, please go ahead.
Sure. Maddie, she's the person at DAP, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then my other question is, how do we get into this document where we complete all this information?
The grant form that I was just scrolling through?
Yeah.
Yep. So you're going to go to the portal. So it's going to be washingtonhistory.org.
Okay.
/portal. Put that in the chat. And here I'll share screen again briefly. And that's going to take you to this landing page here.
Okay. That's good.
If you already have an account, I will say, are going away from the logins with the first name _ last name. We're switching over to doing just your email address as your login. So this is an older one, obviously. Your password. If you are pretty sure you have an account, but you can't remember because it's maybe been 2 years since you submitted an application, go ahead and hit this forgot password. You can enter your email that you think is associated with your account here, hit submit. Be sure to check your junk and spam mail folders because the email that it comes from looks very spammy. It's like, do not reply 07 West Coast something. Like, it's a very odd looking email that comes from the Flux operating system.
Okay. Okay.
Forgot password. If you're pretty sure you've never used this before and have never applied for a grant from us or joined our affiliates program, you can hit create an account now. And it'll walk you through registering your organization here.
Okay.
Yeah, great question.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes. All righty. Allison asked if you already have DAP approval, what's required on the grant form. Yes, do, as David said, go ahead and describe the ground disturbance. And then if you have initiated consultation on your project a year ago, just upload the form, put that year ago date that you initiated. You're like ahead of the curve. That's great. Yes, all projects do need to do DAP even if no ground disturbance is happening. Sorry if I didn't clarify that in my description. The ground disturbance question is for the tribal consultation that WSH is going to do, because those are the projects that we've been advised by our tribal liaison that tribes would be most interested in. The DAP consultation is for everybody. It's just a process that has to be completed if you are using state funds in your capital project. The state wants to if historic properties are going to be negatively affected, they want to have a process for mitigating that. But again, most of our applicants submit their project to DAP and they say, great, thanks for preserving a historic building, go for it. That's generally what the responses are for DAP on this program. Sarah asks, do we need to have all match sources confirmed by April 10th for the eligibility review? No, you do not. Great question. So you don't have to give us details about where your match is coming from until stage 2. And even in stage 2, we only require that you have at 75% of your match confirmed, pledged, or in hand or pledged at the time of that June 5th deadline, the final deadline for the full proposal. You have to have 75% at least documented. And then at the time of contract signing, July 1st, 2027 or later, that is when we require you to have 100% of your match either in hand or pledged, confirmed, to proceed with the contracting. And we'll talk a lot about how you confirm your match in stage 2 because it's a bit of work. And we'll go through that in great detail in our next workshop. So please join us on April, I think, 30th. Go ahead to hop off. Allison asks, for how many years has the in-kind match been limited to 50% for requests over 100K? Is inflation a consideration? I believe it has historically always been limited to 50%, or for quite some time. And it actually was more recently that we made the exception for 100 and under to have all in-kind match. Yeah, we haven't changed that rule in since we've started, and I think it was probably just a couple cycles before David and I came on board. Well, David was here before me, but oh yeah, he says the B21, which would be the 2019 to 2021 cycle, was when the in-kind, all in-kind for smaller projects was permitted. So that was the change. It was permitted instead of restricted. Yeah, I'm not sure what you mean by inflation either. I think inflation is affecting projects on a much broader scale than just this in-kind match piece. the 1-to-1 versus 2-to-1 match is we're thinking about that in terms of just the cost of capital work going up. And so the grant being able to cover a larger percentage of the total project costs would be extremely helpful for especially smaller organizations. And then the other piece that we think is relevant to that is that we are capped at $10 million, and we have been capped at $10 million since 2004. Or 2006. I forget exactly. The early 2000s. So we would be interested in potentially lifting the cap of our program. Coupled with that 1-to-1 change, we think that this program could be a lot more accessible to a lot more organizations. So, as I said, we will be talking more about that when the next legislative session comes up, and making an argument for some program changes. And if those changes are appealing to you all as potential applicants and potential grantees, we'd love for you to share your thoughts with your representatives. All right, Peggy says our project is the same as the one we applied for in 2024. Another question about the DAP consultation. I think we've answered that. Mary Kay asks, I have a project in the portal that was withdrawn in 2022. We are now wanting to move forward with the same project. Can it be moved to active status so I can work on it? Same project, but match is not secure. Unfortunately not. We have changed the form enough that there's different information in different places and additional questions and different things. So we can't just reactivate your old one because it's the wrong version. But you should be able to see it. You and like copy and paste information from it. I believe you should be able to download it as a PDF. And then you can highlight text. I mean, the formatting might be a little wonky. And if you can't do this, Mary Kay, give me a holler. I can help export that. Again, Flex doesn't do a great job exporting to PDF. But if you're just looking for like project summary, budgets, all that stuff is like pretty much hasn't changed too much. You just want to like swap it over into the new form. That's totally fine. Like I was saying, with stage 2, we do have some new like narrative questions, different things like that. So we'll want to be on the updated form, but you're more than welcome to just copy, paste, transfer it over as needed. All right. Emily asks if staff time can be counted toward match. Oh, great question, Emily. The short answer is yes, with proper documentation. And of course, assuming that the timing of the hours worked is an eligible time frame. For staff, this needs to be physical work on the capital project. For organizations that have like facilities staff, we understand that that staff goes a long way to make changes happen. But those hours have to be tracked. So we do not permit you to say, oh, well, so-and-so spent, roughly 30% of their time over these 3 months on the project. So we'll just bill you for 30% of their paycheck. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. We've had people abuse the system, shall we say. So what that means is preferably through some sort of payroll software, you're able to tag the hours that those people are working on that specific capital project. And then we can get a report from your payroll software that says, here's how much they were paid for this pay period, and this is the number of hours that they worked on this project. And we can count those hours toward that project. If you're a smaller organization that doesn't have a sophisticated payroll software, you can just do good old spreadsheet timesheet, or a list of dates and hours worked on those dates and a short description of what it is. You can just do kind of a more old-fashioned timesheet too. But the trick is, unless 100% of that employee's time is dedicated to the project, which sometimes happens, the hours have to be tracked. And you have to have enough tracking and documentation for past hours worked as well.
Generally, they have to have been hired for the project, right? Because you have the start and the end where it gets muddied still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Jim asks, our nonprofit needs to build an operations center. We will need a contractor to give us a bid by June 2027. The cost goes up. How do we keep up? We encourage you to build in contingencies in your budgets. So when you're filling in so for stage one, you're just going to fill in the overall dollar amounts. So whatever paperwork or bids or anything that you're using to generate those numbers, go ahead and give it David, I forget what the sort of recommended inflation slash
It changes. I was trying to look it up. OFM uses a global index. I'll have to look it up and send it out.
David's going to look it up. We encourage you to just add a contingency percentage and just inflate your numbers based on projected cost increases. Yeah, please do that. And then in stage two, we will ask for more specific documentation about like your budget and how, what those numbers are comprised of, which elements are costing what. And then in that budget, there should be a line of based on estimated inflation and contingency, 15% chunk, there's the number, and then you get your totals, which you're inputting into the grant form. But yeah, capital costs go up all the time. It's a rough it's rough out there. So please build in contingency to your planning. We would and this is a long range grant. So yeah, the work doesn't happen until well after a year that you've applied. All right, well that's all in the chat as far as questions go. Any other questions pop up for y'all while we've been chatting? Sheree says thanks. Thanks, Sheree. So David and I are available for questions. Please let us know. We would much rather have, a 5 or 10 minute phone call with you to explain what we're trying to get at in the grant application, rather than have you spend 2 hours frustrated trying to figure out what's going on, or getting frustrated with the portal or anything like that. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I'll send those slides that have both of our phone numbers on and emails on there. Yeah, we're here to help. We're here to be of assistance. So let us know if there's anything we can do. One quick thing I should note: a little bit of a quirk of the system. You saw how I was going up into the kind of upper right corner, clicking edit, and in the bottom right corner. In fact, here I'll just open it back up and show you, because it's a very important piece. Okay. Oops. So here's the edit button to get into making the fields open for you to edit. And you saw there was a save and close at the bottom when you do that. And so that's designed to make sure that only one user at a time is making edits. So as I said, as you go along, hit save every once in a while so that all your information is going to be saved. And then when you're done editing, this is the wrong delete form. Oops. Same information for the button. You hit save and close. That'll take you out of edit mode, and then someone else can jump in if they want to log in on a different machine and edit, get in there and edit it. The one thing I wanted to point out is the submit button. So once you've edited and saved and closed and edited, and everybody's got their information in there. In order to submit it, and you can see this yellow banner up here, your application is not submitted. You have to hit submit. Well, this is not going to go through because I haven't filled it out. You have to hit submit in order for us to be able to see it. And once you do that, this application will move from the draft category, and sorry, this is very confusing because I have a lot of drafts in here because I mess around with them and make sure all the edits I'm making to the form are working. It will move from draft to submitted. So you can reload the page, and it should be under this part of the menu instead of the draft applications part of the menu. So, on April 10th, be sure that you hit submit, or before. Before is great too. You are always welcome to submit early if you're able. All right. Lots of thank yous in the chat. Thanks everybody for taking some time out of your day to spend with us. We look forward to all these awesome projects. Heritage Capital Projects is my favorite part of my job, so I always love when we get a new round going. I appreciate y'all, and reach out with any questions. Happy to help, and we'll see you hopefully in the next workshop where we'll dive into even more details. All right. See y'all later.
Hey, everybody.
Bye.